still be in my head in the same form that it is now, and I'll write it down and I'll have it forever. But it won't work. You won't, when you get home, you might remember that there was something that you wanted to write down. You might write it in the wrong way. Your brain process is not the same one that it was when you had the thought. So you have to have a notebook just to write down ideas and details when you see them. But I mean more than that. I mean, have a book at home which you write in every day. Do some daily writing practice. And here, this is about building up discipline. A good idea is to set yourself a task, and it may be, for example, write 3 pages a day. Yeah? Or it may be a time task. It might be just write without stopping for half an hour or 20 minutes. And that's something that you should do every day in the notebook. And what you should write about is the first thing that comes to your head. Okay? Every day you should tell yourself, all right, from 9 o'clock till 9:30 in the morning, or whatever's a good time for you, every day, whether I have a headache or I feel good, whether I'm happy or sad, whether it's sunny or raining, whether I'm busy or not busy, every day at this time I'm going to sit down for 20 minutes or half an hour and I'm going to write 3 pages about the first thing that comes into my head. Now that sounds like an aimless exercise, but it's not. Don't immediately reread your work. Okay? What you're doing here is liberating the unconscious. You're just getting all of these words out. And at first, a lot of it will just be, my jacket is hanging on the wardrobe, it's a black jacket, and it's sunny outside, and I hope it won't be too hot today. And you're just writing stuff like that. But you'll find that before too long, just by forcing yourself to come out with words without thinking too much, you'll start coming out with all kinds of things. You'll start coming out with, oh, I remember having that argument with Ahmed yesterday, and I wish I'd said that to him, and I forgot, but he's an idiot, and then you'll start coming up with, my mother shouldn't have done that when I was 3 years old. And then you'll start writing about your dreams and your hopes and If you do this, all kinds of stuff will come out. And the most common reason for not writing fiction or for not writing books is, I would love to write, but I don't have anything to write about. I don't have anything to say. And that stopped me writing for a long time. I thought, I don't really have anything new to say. I don't really have any ideas. I don't have a story in my head. And what I didn't realise is that you don't have it until you do it. It does not come to you. There's an idea, and all I need to do now is write down what's in my head. It doesn't work like that. It comes as you're doing it. You have to work in order to find the stories and the ideas. So that's what this keeping a writer's notebook and writing every day about anything is about. Once you've done it for 3 months or 6 months, you go back and read what you've written. Don't read it critically, because if you read it critically, you will inhibit yourself. You will stop yourself just writing freely. But read it and just see, what are the ideas which I keep coming back to? For example, in this novel, I noticed after I'd finished writing it, I realised that it's full of stuff about fathers and sons. I didn't know that, actually, when I was writing it. I didn't know I was writing about that. But it's full of the main characters has a dead father, and he's who he idolises, and he's trying to imitate the dead father. And there are lots of false fathers, lots of failed fathers or substitute fathers in the text. And of course, these are lots of issues which are to do with me and my father. And I wasn't aware that I was writing about them. I didn't say to myself, well, I have lots of issues about my father, I think I'm going to write a book about that. I didn't know I was writing about it until after I'd done it. So do that with your writer's notebook. When you've written for 3 months or 6 months, go back and find out, I keep writing about the Taliban, or I keep writing about fear. Or I keep writing about relationships between men and women. Maybe this is my theme. Maybe this is what I need to write a book about. You will learn about we go back to know yourself. By doing this exercise, you will learn much more about yourself. I think that's a really good exercise. I think that exercise can make a writer of you. I'm talking far too much. A little bit more. What does that mean? I've written cultivate and separate the adult and the child in yourself. Does anybody have any idea what I'm talking about?
Do you need both?
Yes.
Yes.
You need both to write?
Yes.
So you have to cultivate and encourage both parts of yourself to be able to write really well.
Exactly. You need both parts of yourself. These are the adult in yourself and the child in yourself. You need both of them to write. Do you want to add to that?
I just wanted to say that one is the creative self and the other is the critical self.
Very good.
Yeah, that's fun.
Very good. Which is which?
Yeah.
This one is.
That's the critical reflective.
Is it a free child? Yeah.
As in, yes, a free child. The adult is a critic. The adult brings you discipline. The adult is a judge, and a harsh judge. And the child is a creator, a free creator. It's undisciplined, the child. It just plays, it's playful.
The adult has wisdom. Hopefully.
Hopefully. That's a good response. One hopes so, yes.
He's the one who said it.
You said it, okay. Now, do you see what I mean? Both of these parts of you, the child exists within you. The little boy or the little girl that you used to be still exists in there somewhere. There's always a part of you. I mean, me, I still like playing. It's good that I have children because it gives me an excuse to sit there and play with soldiers and cars and things. When my children have grown up more, I don't know what I'm going to do because I love doing that kind of thing. Why must the two be separated?
Because the adult needs to nurture the free child.
The adult needs to nurture the child,
The free child.
the free child. What is a bad thing that parents can do to children? A bad thing that adults...
Negative
They can inhibit them. They can inhibit them. Inhibit their creativity and upset them. You know, make them build an emotional shell around themselves. If my son comes home from school and he's failed his maths test, if I say to him, okay, well I know that you're pretty good at maths, but you've got some problems, let's sit down and think about the problems, he will probably respond quite well to that. If I say to him, you stupid idiot, I'm so upset with you, I wish that you didn't exist, you embarrassed me by failing this test, then is he going to improve in maths? No, he's just going to internalise, I'm a failure, I'm not going to put any emotion into trying to succeed because I'll just get shouted at again and I'll feel bad about myself and I'm not going to do it. Now it's the same when you're dealing with yourself. When you're writing in your writer's notebook, it's the child that's writing. It's completely undisciplined. You're writing the first thing that comes into your mind. The adult has to be given an injection and put to sleep at this time. Because if the adult is looking over the shoulder of the child and saying, that's rubbish, oh, what are you writing that for? What a silly idea, that's boring, and what this looks like, then you're going to give up. The child will give up. Okay? So think about that. Be extreme. The British Embassy told me to come to Pakistan and tell you to be extreme. That just came to me. What do I mean by be extreme? Anybody? Can anybody? Yes.
Just let go.
Yes.
You know?
Go where your imagination leads you.
It takes you. If I'm really, really dramatic, really, really angry, really, really fearful, whatever that feeling is, just go with it.
Don't hold back.
Don't hold
Give it
back.
all you have.
Yes.
Give it all you have.
Give it all you have.
Write no limits to yourself.
Pardon?
Have no limits to yourself.
Have no limits. Yes.
Lack of balance.
A lack of balance. Well, it could be, yes. Certainly at first. Certainly at first, a lack of balance is something to think about. Well, I mean, if you think of your friends who are very funny, think of your funny friends or your expressive friends. They might not be funny, but they might really make a point strongly in a way that's memorable. And it's, in most cases, it's usually because they exaggerate. You know, they don't just come in and say, oh, it's a bit hot today. They say, I've melted into a pool of water. I've disappeared. I'm not here. You know, they go beyond the real to express themselves. And good writing, especially from young writers, it changes a bit as you develop your skills, I think. But good writing, especially for young writers, especially a first novel, is often very extreme. It's very punchy. You exaggerate everything. You exaggerate people's features, their expressions. You might be extreme about your ideas. In my book, buy it in the shops. Very useful for all household tasks. In this book, I had an idea, which was. My idea was that I was living in the Arab world, and I was looking back at Britain after September the 11th and the war on terror, the war on Iraq, and all of this. And people in Britain were saying, or people in the West, there was this idea that what's wrong with the Muslim world is that they are religious. We are rational, we think, and they are emotional and religious. And I wanted to kind of have a conversation about that, and I wanted to say that actually everything is a religion of some kind or other. You know, as well as Islam and Christianity and Judaism and Hinduism, the obvious religions, nationalism for many people is a religion. Materialism can be a religion. Atheism of a certain kind, a certainty that God doesn't exist. I know this, I believe this. It's a religious idea. How do you know? You don't know. You know, you believe it. Capitalism, faith in certain kinds of capitalism can be a religion. So I had this idea, it was a dominant theme, a dominant idea. I want to show that all of these different characters have religious frames of thought, even the ones that hate religion, even the ones that think they're not religious. That was my idea, and I was a bit extreme about it. I kept going at this idea. I kept writing more characters who were, you know, being religious in some way or the other. So be convinced about a central idea. Be passionate about what you're writing. And it could be something very simple. It could be something like, rich people treat poor people badly, and I don't like that. It could be something like that. You know? It should be, Kashmir should be independent, or should be part of Pakistan. And I'm passionately attached to this idea, so I'm going to do everything I can to express that in this story. Be very passionate. Don't go to it quietly. Be alive and noisy and violent in your writing and your thinking. Right. 7. And in the middle of this, I'll give you an exercise to do, so I'll stop talking a little bit. 7. Somebody near the back on this side talked about realism. Is somebody back there? Yeah. You said that you said that we should be realistic. We should think about realism. And I don't know. That's not a rule because, of course, some great writing is surreal or dreamlike, completely unrealistic in some ways. But nevertheless, the general trend in English language literature and probably world literature for several centuries has been realism. And even an experimental writer like James Joyce is still a realist. Because when James Joyce developed, James Joyce who wrote Ulysses, when James Joyce developed the technique of the interior monologue and the stream of consciousness, it looks quite strange on the page, but it's realism because he is trying to really reflect how the mind works, what it feels like to be a living human being with thoughts training through your mind. So even this kind of strange modernist experimental writing is realist. So it's worthwhile thinking very hard about realism. It's the dominant form. And basic to realism is context. What that means is that nothing happens in isolation. People don't just do an action. They do it for all kinds of reasons. The way in which I'm talking, the way in which I'm holding my hands, unconsciously, this must be modelled on something else. It must be based on the way my parents talked or held their hands, or my grandparents, or friends who have been influential, or people I've seen on TV. You always come from a cultural, historical, social, economic context. When we meet somebody new, whether it's conscious or unconscious, we're always making judgments about their background, from the sound of their voice, the clothes that they wear, the way that they behave, the way that they talk, the way they hold their body. We're always asking ourselves, is this person from Karachi or from another city? Is this person, which ethnic background is this person from? Is he a Pathan or a Punjabi? Yes? We're asking ourselves, is this person a rich person or a poor person? A working class person, a middle class person? Is this a nice person? Is this the kind of person that could be my friend or not? We're always asking ourselves, where is this person from? So ask yourself that about your characters. I'll be quick. I'm conscious of talking too much, but I'll be quick. I was thinking about this I did a writing workshop in Palestine. So we were talking about things that have happened in the Arab world, and it might be a bit different here, but we were thinking about it in terms of generations. I was thinking, my grandfather's generation in the Arab world, going back to religion, I'm afraid, my grandfather's generation in the Arab world was religious, to make a generalization, was religious in a traditional way, if you know what I mean. I won't go into all that, but it was religious in a traditional way. My father's generation were secularists. They weren't religious, or they were a lot less religious than their parents were. I'm making a generalization, not everybody, but in general, the society became much less religious. Women took off their hijabs, people talked about religion less, religion wasn't really involved in politics. And then this generation, maybe my generation, is not the younger people, but my generation, I suppose, is very religious, but in a modernist way. They're not religious in the way that my grandfather was religious. They don't believe in the old traditional things, and they don't believe in a lot of the things which they would see as superstitions from the past. And they're modern people. Yet they are religious, and religion has come back. Women have put their hijab back on, and religion is involved in the public sphere, in politics, and so on. Now that's very interesting. So if I'm going to write a story about a family, 3 generations, or the interaction of a son and a father, or a daughter and a grandmother, I'm going to be conscious of this. I'm going to be aware that this generation was traditionally religious, this one was secular, this one is religious in a modernist way. I'm also going to be aware that people don't always fit. So, somebody who in my father's generation was very religious would not have fitted. He would have been the odd one out. People would have thought he was strange. But in this generation now, people wouldn't think he was strange at all. The secular person wouldn't fit. So they don't have to fit the stereotypes, but they have to exist in a context. Yes? This background, this context, you don't have to show all of it to the reader, but you have to know about it. If your character hits somebody, you can choose how much information to give to the reader. You don't have to give, John hit Bill, and then you don't have to give 10 pages of explanation about John's childhood and why he's a violent person, and you don't have to. But you have to have some idea of this. In order to know how the character works, you have to know why he behaves in the way he behaves. If you don't know why your character behaves in the way he behaves, then you'll make him do illogical things. You'll make him do things which are out of character. Okay, here's an exercise, simply because I've been talking far too much. In your groups, for those of you who came late, please just with the people next to you in groups of 3 or 4 or 5, just work together. You're not going to have time to write a proper story. It's just getting some ideas and sentences down quickly in 5 or 10 minutes. What I would like you to do is to think of a character who goes on a journey to his childhood home or her childhood home. Okay? As they're making this journey, and the journey could be by train or by car, or they could be walking, as they make this journey, they see various objects. They see buildings, or fields, or animals, or houses, or cars, whatever it is. They see various objects. And they respond to these objects. They feel happy when they see them, they feel sad or angry, they remember something. Do you see what I'm saying? And all of this has to be pointing towards the context of the situation. So try to do that in your group. Think of a character going home. Just think of one quickly like that, because we don't have time. Think of any character going home, going back to their childhood home. It might be after 50 years living in another country. They go back to their childhood home, they see these objects, and they respond to them in a way that tells us something about the character and their background. Alright? To use the religion example, it could be Mr. Bashir returns home to Karachi after 60 years living in America, and he looks out of the window from the taxi taking him from the airport to his old family home, and he sees a mosque, and he feels physically ill because he remembers how much he